So welcome everyone to the budget pension and scope meeting. I believe we have just about everybody here. We're only missing one member at the moment, but I know that she's on her way. Just to overview the CAB rules with you real quick, we're going to ask you to make sure that you help us adhere to the agenda timeline, that we stay on topic throughout the evening. Please listen and respect everyone's points of view. Participate and ask questions. Please state your name when speaking so that we can note it in the minutes. And if you would, please use a microphone as well to make sure everybody can hear you. It's not just important for in the room, but for our online attendees. Do not dominate the discussion. And if you will, please place your phones, pagers, any other electronic devices on silent. And with that, Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom French, and this is the balancing the budget between the pension and site mission committee. And on the committee, then what I want to do is do pros and cons, so we can winnow the list down to the 3 or 4 top recommendations that we think should go in our recommendation. And then I think the next thing to do would be to write the recommendation with those in it and present it back to the committee. Does that make sense? So it'll be pretty structured going through this. So has everybody had a chance to read the list? Okay. Are there any additions to the list?
I do, it's sort of. Dan Kaminsky Cab. I had one kind of drafted in my mind, but didn't get it to you. I believe the recommendation should flow something along the line of a budget request to include, obviously, the MinSafe, EM progress, and within EM progress, maintain adequate funding for the current workforce, and obtain milestones and commitments in the EM. And then, as importantly, the whole purpose of this meeting is to add the necessary funding beyond that scope to fund the pension.
So I agree with you completely, but our recommendation is going to go to the department, and they can only put a proposed budget in, which I believe they're going to do. But we can go ahead and put it in. I think it's good to get it on paper. And so, would you do me a favor? Would you write that down the way you see it, and I'll get it in the list.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm going to email it to you, James.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. Does anybody else have recommendations? Since I'm not hearing any, I think we can start at the top and go through these. Are these positive? We want to keep them, whatever, and see where we end up. We've talked in several different forms. I'm going to start with number 1. We've talked in several different forms of and educating people on mission in the future. And so I think we would probably want to have either one big public meeting or a public meeting and a separate meeting for the staffers so that they can really understand. The pension's very complicated, and it's not intuitively obvious from the back row what's going on. So it'd be good for those young people to have that opportunity, I think. So anyway, does anybody have a comment about that? I mean, I think that's a very easy, doable recommendation. Okay.
Joyce Underwood, CAB. Is the purpose of giving public presentations to educate the public so that they can further appeal to the political entities that are involved here? Is that the reason why we're doing this?
We can't advocate for that.
Well, no, but I mean, is that the idea?
Well, I think it's good that everybody understands how the pension works and how it's buffered off from special influence, but also what impact it's going to have to the site and the community.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands where we are. And that was we've talked about this 3 different ways, but that's kind of where it was.
Narendra Malik, I think just a novel idea that we should ask DOE to investigate work on the pension plan. I remember in the last retirees association, there was some topic discussed that the retirees who retired a long time ago, their pensions are so small based on the salaries, because they were low salaries at that time, 20 years ago. So they were given probably, I'm not sure, $1,000 $1 a year extra or something like that. So that need to be revisited because 10 years from now, the salaries which the current retirees are getting the pension, their salaries compared to the 10 years now, their salaries would be way low and the cost of living is not going to keep it up with the pension. So it should be revisited.
Okay, we have an agreement with DOE that we're not going to get off into pension funding. We're going to talk about how do we make sure that the pension payments get made and not adjustments. So that's kind of the sharp edge we're skating down right now. Otherwise, all of us retirees would be excluded from the discussion.
That's true. I'm sorry, I should have known that.
Doug?
Doug Howard Cap. You know, Tom, I was, as a citizen and not really having the insight that I have now on the cab, I would have never thought, you know, with Savannah River.
I think that's fine. Well, I was going to do that.
Okay.
I have to.
DOE responds to recommendations. I just find it because I think the public outreach, and this is my personal opinion, I think the public outreach, the public explanation is very important, and the political leaders is important too. However, I think they're two separate things.
Okay.
Dawn Gillis Cab, along those same lines, I think that the political leaders need a different set of data than the public does. The public, I'm not convinced that the public needs to know how the pension operates so much as how paying the pension is going to affect what happens at the site, clean up at the site, versus the political leaders need to know how it operates and that they've got to be able to fund it at these levels to keep people being paid. So I think it's two totally separate presentations, two totally separate.
Okay. When I draft the thing, I'll make them two separate. Okay, if there are no other comments, I'll move to number 2. And I'm not sure what order these are going to be put in the document, so, but I think recommend that DOE conduct a study to determine the funding levels of the pensions at the various sites. Now, I don't know whether EM can ask anything but EM sites, but at least if we understood the EM site pensions, how we would stack up against it, I think would be very helpful for us. We may want to do that first. So if we talk to the political leaders, we can say, you know, we're number 1 or we're number 10, whatever the numbers are. But I think we should put that in as a recommendation.
Dawn Gillis Cab. I'm not 100% sure of this, but I think the Savannah River site's an entirely different animal than any of the other sites. And it has to do a lot with how it was funded way back when, 30 years ago. And so I don't think there's any real comparison about how these two different things are funded. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I'm seeing a few shakes of the head from around here. So I don't know if that will provide us anything. It might not hurt, but I don't know anyway.
So I'm not talking about how it's funded. I'm talking about funding level. So I think actually Savannah River is probably at 80%. There are many sites that are 100%.
You mean as far as what the federal government pays, puts in towards what the bill is?
How much is actually in the plan? So we're 85% funded, right, of our target of 100%. Okay. Some sites are at our 100% target already.
But this might be an interesting discussion just because it's so different, just to educate everybody on why it's so different and why everybody else is 100%, we're only 85.
I don't think everybody else is 100%.
I know, but you know what I'm saying. But we are in an entirely different ballgame than all the rest of the sites.
I think every site is different. I think every site's unique. And like Oak Ridge has actually 4 pensions because of the way they were constructed.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But anyway, I think that one we're definitely going to have to wordsmith.
I think. Sorry.
Go ahead. I have a question.
I just, from my vantage point, Gil Allen's with Cap, I just think on number 2, the wording, and we're not here to wordsmith, and I respect what you're saying, but we have to be careful that we're asking for something that is Savannah River site specific, and we are, but just make sure the wording's clear, because we're asking for the various operating sites. We just want to make sure it's Savannah River site specific in our recommendation. That's all.
Well,
Why it benefits us? I mean, why it benefits Savannah Riverside for us to have this information?
I got you.
I agree with your recommendation.
I got you.
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, along the lines of what Gil just said, I'm just concerned the way that is worded, what the true tie-in to Savannah Riverside is. We're in the unique situation we're in. I'm not so certain that all the data in the world from the other sites is going to bear anything on our situation. Unless if you're, what you were talking about is maybe explaining the situation a little bit better.
So before I was on the CAB, and I was on the retirees committee and I was running it, we talked to the delegation. The delegation said, we need to know if you're the bottom, because it's going to be a lot easier for us to go ask for appropriations if we know that you're underprivileged, so to speak, right? And so they said that, so the Retired Association has asked them to do a study, the Congressional Research Office.
Okay.
And they have not provided that study. But I think DOE could provide the study. I mean, DOE has the books, right? So they could.
Didn't someone in one of the presentations in this committee show where we stood?
Compared to other sites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if we had it compared
I
to
thought
other
so.
sites.
Was it
Compared to
member of
other
the
sites?
public, or was it an actual presentation?
There was one of the retirees
Okay, so it wasn't.
got up and said that. They have done some studies. But we don't
Okay.
have official documents.
Correct.
They've done a lot of work.
Okay.
Their president's sitting in the audience, I think.
All right, thanks.
Joyce?
Joyce Underwood Cab. In the interest of winnowing this down to less than 6, are 2 and 5 connected? Can we?
Can we get them?
I'm sorry. I mean, we're talking about 2, but I mean, are those connected ideas?
They're
Or are they separate ideas?
they're separate.
They're separate ideas.
Separate
Okay.
Oh, yeah, they're separate. I really like
Because
five.
because if DOE were to be able to fund our pension, the $220 million or whatever's due in 2020, they have to have a source of that funding. And then it's not typical that they can go back to Congress and say, hey, we need another 220 to throw at Savannah River. So they've got to be able to figure out where that money comes from in the bigger pot that they get.
I guess what I'm thinking is maybe one of those other sites is funded at like 101%. You could skim it off.
No, you can't do that. No. That's a legality thing.
So did I get all the comments on 2? On 3?
Actually, sorry, I tied into number 2, I think the strongest. DOE's always BSs and all the different sites all rolled into one, so if that's what they're going in with. And then we do have the PBS stuff that Congress actually has line marked, so to speak, in the past, right? But nowhere in there, in those line marks, been a cost management of the pension. If I remember Congress, wouldn't I just come back and say, look, I gave you a bucket of money. It's not my fault you divvied it up wrong.
Well,
what do you want me to do about it now, other than this amount being included in the big bucket of the pension, or the budget?
Good segue, because that's the third recommendation.
Okay.
Because right now, I agree with you, right now, it's a tax on all the existing PPSs. It's basically invisible. So if liquid waste asks for whatever number, I think what they wanted to do is to get it out of the site budget and have it independent, but I'm not sure legacy management could do that. That's what I don't know. I don't know if that's in their charter. I think you got to be closed, or on the way to being closed, but I don't know that.
Does anyone from the department want to weigh in on that? I know we have a few folks here tonight. I know it's kind of an odd. Is that something that we need to research and come back with? Okay.
I just thought no. I mean,
Yeah, that's something, as we have the next draft, we can research that and see if it's even possible. I don't know. Gil?
do we know of any sites that have legacy management on it, EM, and NSA on it?
I think it's.
Especially to a fund like this.
I asked John about it. John said they would have to reprogram it, and it would have to be. They'd have to have a lot of support in Congress to do that, because it's a very unusual thing. Okay. And if there are no questions on that, the last one is the one that Dan wrote. Can we put that up? Oh, it is. Okay, good.
So Dan Kaminsky, Cab. My only thought behind that idea is we've kind of come to them with maybe a top-down budget view, and this is kind of a little bit of bottom-up. So making absolutely certain we don't want to go backwards with our budget with regards to the progress DOE's making at the site, and we can't lose the current workforce. So we have to keep them gainfully employed and engaged. Otherwise, people start moving away, and our recruitment efforts become that much worse. So I kind of threw a bunch of bullet points in there that need to be captured within any recommendation to DOE, so that they understand that this isn't, if we were getting 200 million last year, 200 million is going to be what we're working with this year. That's not going to work. You know, we have to go bottom up and show them where the money really needs to be.
So my comment about that is we might want to put that at the top as an overarching recommendation. So that would be top tier. This is our goal. These are our recommendations to do these things. And we'll have to craft that a little bit, but I think it's a really good overarching statement. Joyce?
Thank you. I answered my question. I was going to ask if it was a separate recommendation, but if you do what you said, it doesn't have to be a separate recommendation.
Well, I think it's kind of like it would be the recommendation and then here are the bullet points under it.
Yeah.
Dawn Gills, Cab, just a little, I think under MinSafe, aren't legal requirements and commitments included in MinSafe? That's it.
Well, actually, I was thinking from an EM progress standpoint, if there's anything out there that they had to do, such as, well, MOX isn't in this, but that would be kind of a similar.
Well, okay, I see what you're saying, legal, but getting PU offsite kind of thing.
Right.
Okay, that's when I think of legal requirements, I think of environmental requirements and things like that.
We might change that word.
Oh,
MinSafe,
sure.
MinSafe means shut down. And really what you're talking about is maintain operations, right?
Well, no. MinSafe, as described in the budget, is the minimum requirements to keep everything operating.
Hot standby.
Yeah.
Well, no.
So I'm not saying stop at MinSafe. I'm saying that obviously we need to cover it,
Right.
which those
Right.
are all
Number
covered in the
one.
PBSs to begin with.
No, but I mean to DOE, MinSafe means they shut down and protect all the nuclear materials.
Well, I certainly don't want to give them that impression.
Well, that's why I
so
think
we'll
we might
wordsmith that.
Yeah, we want to wordsmith that one thing.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about, and what I'm hearing is you're talking about maintaining operation as high a level as we can, or something like that, right?
Right.
Okay. Does anybody ever have any more thoughts or comments? Hey, James, make a note of this, please.
I do.
You did good. Oh.
We're just getting warmed up.
Yeah. Gil Allensworth Cap. When we started this, I mean, Tom, thank you for doing it. I was really focused on the pension aspect of this, and that's because people are important to me, and I believe throughout this and the presentations that DOE's provided us, I believe DOE is going to make sure that the pension's funded. So my concern's gone from the pension now to the mission throughout this process. I started out really concerned about the pension. Now I'm really concerned about the mission. To say I'm not worried is not proper English, but I mean, I'm less concerned about the pension now than when we started months ago. But I am concerned about the mission. And Dan, I thank you for putting that up there, because I think that's starting to get to that. I don't know.
It's the title of our committee.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think it can be overstated. I don't think this can be overstated. Whether you're somebody here that is concerned about the economic benefits of the Savannah River site to the CSRA, the 5-county area, whatever, or upstream, downstream, if you're worried about the economic impact of the site, or if you're worried about the environmental issue, aspect of the site, it's all one and the same. And this is tearing me apart. And I'm trying, because I mean, Tom, you've worked on this longer than just this committee. Narinder and DOE, we know, I mean, just and people. I mean, we have these things out there. And there is no easy answer. And so I don't know. I guess I'm just talking because I'm frustrated. So
Michael?
Mike Michelanis, DOE. I just wanted to reiterate what Gil just said. That is the point of all the DOE and contractor presentations up until now. It's never been about funding the pension. It's about the impacts that funding the pension will have potentially on the mission, the impact to production, and eventually, if it doesn't turn around, the impacts it can have just to what we currently call min safe. I mean, we won't let safety in the facilities degrade, but we'll have issues with maintaining all the legal and binding requirements as well. It becomes very difficult, and that's the point of all the information we've been sharing with you. You got it.
I heard it right.
You got it.
Good job, Doug.
And the pension is not only EM employees, there's includes NNSA also.
Doug Howard, Cap. Tom, the impact, those that are working currently at SRS right now, this will impact them also in future, I guess, people that are going to work there. Now, does anybody know what the impact will be as far as the retention, recruitment, and the morale and welfare of those that are currently working there? I mean, how much of an impact is this going to have on them, and are they fully aware of what we're talking about here now?
Well, two things. One, the educational process is to help them understand what's going on, what the impacts might be. John Lopez had some numbers, and I don't have his slides in front of me, but he was talking about if they had to make a 200, picking that number out of the air sort of, and maintained this year's budget, which, they're going to get a slight increase, but if they don't get much of an increase and they had to pay the $220 million, and they had to go to MinSafe, they said it could impact the number of employees at the site, and he didn't have a number. He just said that's a lot of money to pull out of the operations.
Wow.
So-
Cloud had numbers on that meeting.
So yeah, there's going to be an impact, and we can get John Lopez's slides back out. I've got them and look through them. So to your point, Gil, I think the most positive impact the committee can have with DOE is Tighten Everywhere and this understanding and awareness of how serious this is. This is a very serious problem. And so the educational outreach may be the most important recommendation we make. The others are important, but that education outreach, those two, might be number one, first thing to do. Just so everybody can have the same anxiety you got.
Tom, I mean, it's not, we're not, but you've done a great job, and if it wasn't for your leadership on this, I don't know if I would have necessarily come to the way I'm thinking now. I mean, you really helped guide this conversation, and through some pretty rough conversations, some difficult conversations, and I think I probably led you off on a few rabbit trails, so I apologize on that. One of the things, I've had the opportunity to speak on our behalf at a few things, and I always bring this committee up. I said, one of the committees, and so when it's amazing to me that it's known out there. So when I'm speaking to a National Academy of Sciences, and I've had the opportunity twice in the last month to represent the CAB, and I said, well, one of the things we're working on is this, and not everybody in these, but I mean, I usually get 3 or 4 people nodding their head, knowing exactly what we're talking about here. And I guess I'm going back to my frustration. I'm like, how can we know about this? And I'm not going to cry over spilt milk like I was at the beginning of this thing. Let's go back to 1993 and 97, and this was a mistake. Oh well, water under the bridge. But I agree. I guess I'm just saying I agree with you, and I thank you. We talked about this shining a flashlight on this thing and a spotlight. And thanks for everything you've done, and thanks for guiding me through it.
Do we have any other comments around the table?
Everyone's happy. These are the recommendations that you want to have crafted into a final form. You want to see all of these? Are there any others that's not included?
So number 6 will make the overarching statement, and then we'll have 5 bullets. Is that what people will see? The only one I'm not sure about is legacy management. Might have to pull that out if it doesn't. If it can't do it.
I think it's good to keep in there and let DOE answer.
So, Mike McLean, DOE, what I would suggest, rather than deferring this because the committee sunsets around the May time frame, unless you go back to the full board, just put it in there and let DOE sort it out when you make the recommendation. We'll deal with that in our response. I don't think this committee needs to worry about trying to understand the role of legacy management, how they're funded, et cetera, and how they'll deal with it and what limitations they have. That's part of our job as responding to the recommendation. So
Okay.
that would be my advice as your DDFO.
Okay. So we'll put an overarching statement. We'll have 5 bullet points. Does everybody agree? Dan?
Just perhaps another addition into the overarching statement is something with regards to maintenance and infrastructure. If we want to wordsmith that MinSafe thing, to work those types of words into there.
Okay.
And again, Mike McLean, DOE, just to remind, when the department made the many presentations on MinSafe, and I think, Dan, you mentioned this already, it includes the maintaining the facilities hot or operating or however, but producing nothing, the minimum safe condition that they can be in, plus meeting all of our legal requirements and the pensions part of MinSafe. And so our definition of it is not purely the absolute minimum to keep a facility safe, because it's a little bit more than that generally. It varies facility by facility. So if you say MinSafe to us, I think we're going to interpret it the way we've explained it to you, unless you clarify it differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I?
Sure, absolutely.
Dave Vavakis, there is another number 7 that I can think of if you would permit me to talk about it.
Sure.
One of the things that I read about in the financial press is de-risking for pensions. And I know I spoke to you briefly about this a couple months ago or whatever, but New York Times, Sears, CBS, Verizon, there's another company, number of companies, and what they do is they take their pension plan and their pension dollars, and they sell it off to an insurance company. Typically, that's one way of de-risking. That's what the most common way is now. And they are out of the pension business at that point, and then it becomes an annuity for the pensioners. And now, what the downside of this is that they're no longer covered by ERISA or the PBGC. So,
I think what we ought to do is. Jim Barry's still back there. Sometime we could have a discussion. When Jim gave us his talk, and I don't want to put him on the spot right now. I was going to flip through his slides because that came up during discussion, Dave, as one of the things that we could recommend. And I can't remember why we walked away from it, but I can't remember what the reason was. We'll write it down and try to explore it quickly.
yeah.
Okay.
I was just telling Dave, that happened, I believe it was 2 years ago. Kimberly Clark in our area did that. But it's not there today.
Anything else? Should we go to public comment?
Sure.
Okay.
Does anybody have any public comment to make? You sure? Joe? No.
Where's Jim Merrill when you need him?
They're run by Justice.
Okay.
I have a question. When's our next scheduled meeting? When's this committee's next scheduled meeting? And do we plan on having this committee, do we expect to have this recommendation ready for the March full board meeting?
No.
It's the end of March, March 20th, 21st, somewhere in there.
I don't think we can do it that fast.
Okay.
My intent was to go to the next, do a report at the March meeting.
Okay.
We'll have a meeting in April,
Okay.
all written. We can wordsmith it and present it in May. And that's when we sunset. That was my goal.
Okay. That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Bobby Williams, Cap. So when would we have the public meeting? Can we have the public meeting before we have the?
That would be a DOE thing. They would be running that meeting. They would schedule it as a response to your recommendation if they chose to accept that particular recommendation. So it would be after May, after the board approved it.
So I was anticipating this summer. It depends on how quickly DOE can react.
Crazy question. I know we have no. When does the 2019 budget get pushed through Congress, or when do we know? When do they talk about it? March. Okay, but I mean that's when the House and the Senate sits down with it.
They schedule hearings.
They schedule hearings. So and we just don't know. We don't have
They haven't actually had a budget for 15 years. So
I understand. I get that. I'm just saying.
So the 20
we
budget.
work when we base our continuing resolutions, that in things.
So the 2019 budget considerations in the fall, isn't it, Dave? The appropriations.
Yeah, the hearings, yes.
Yeah. So the appropriations are when they sort out the money.
If they ever sort out the money.
Well, 2019, theoretically, they're going to sort out the money and be on schedule. That's their goal, I think.
There's a process. There's 302A allocations.
Dave, can I get you to use a microphone, please?
I can hear it.
I understand. I'm not concerned about you.
There's before it goes to the subcommittees, there's a 302A allocation for the from the budget committee, and then there's something called 302B allocations that go to each of the subcommittees, and then they, divvy it up. And energy and water would be one of the subcommittees that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a chance that this would have some impact in the fall time frame if we can get it passed in May. No other comments? No questions? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.